Welcome viewers, welcome to the new lesson from Dr. R's Biology. If you did not subscribe the channel, you can just click on the subscribe button and bell icon.
Welcome students. We know that the oxidative phosphorylation, that is the final stage of oxidative or aerobic respiration, is happening at the inner mitochondrial membrane, and the Krebs cycle is happening within the mitochondrial matrix. So in order to understand how the mitochondria is formed or structurally organized to support this kind of metabolism, we have to know about it, and in this lesson we will be just discussing the structure of mitochondria with regard to or with special reference to metabolism. We know that mitochondria is actually composed of two membranes, or it is covered by a double membrane, and it will be successively known as the outer membrane and an inner membrane. Okay, so it is having an outer membrane and the inner membrane. So if you are just considering the properties of outer and inner membrane, we can see that the outer membrane is actually permeable to most of the molecules. It will be permeable to most of the molecules. Why? Because it is having specialized structures called VDAC. So VDAC is nothing but specialized voltage dependent anion channels. Okay, so these are VDAC, or otherwise known as the mitochondrial porins. Due to this presence of this mitochondrial porins or VDAC, the outer membrane is almost permeable to most of the ions and smaller molecules. So we can see that this part is the cytoplasm and this is the mitochondrial matrix. So as the outer membrane is almost permeable to almost all molecule, we can see that the component in the cytoplasm will be almost equal to the component within the outer membrane. Okay, so what you can see in this particular phase, outer to inner membrane, so at this particular point will be equal to the components in the cytoplasm. Okay, so it is due to the presence of VDAC, that is voltage dependent anion channels. Okay, so it will be the anion channels. Now, if you are just considering the inner membrane, it is almost impermeable. That means it will not be allowing most of the ion and polar molecules. So these kind of molecules require specialized transporters in order to get into the matrix of this particular mitochondria. So let us see the structure in detail. So this is the outer membrane. I am just representing VDAC only here, but you have to remember that throughout this particular outer membrane it will be having that particular VDAC. So this is the outer membrane, and this one is the inner membrane. Now, if you are just looking at the inner membrane, we can see numerous infoldings within the inner membrane. The purpose of this infolding is actually to increase the surface area of inner membrane, so that it can accommodate more number of respiratory substances in it, and it can increase the efficiency of respiration. We know that mitochondria is the powerhouse where you can find the synthesis of ATP. So in order to support maximum synthesis of ATP, it requires maximum number of respiratory substances. So in order to accommodate maximum number of respiratory substances, it needs maximum surface area. And to attain the maximum surface area, there is numerous infolding in inner membrane, and that is known as the crystal. So you are familiar with all those things we are learning from your school onwards. So it will be having numerous infoldings like this. So cristae is this particular region is known as the cristae. Okay, so numerous infoldings are there in the inner membrane, and that is known as the cristae. Now we can see two parts within the mitochondria. What are the two parts? The region within the inner membrane and the region between inner membrane and the outer membrane. So these are the two regions that you can find within the mitochondria. So due to the presence of double membrane, there are two compartments within the mitochondria, and the two compartments are nothing but the innermost one, that is known as the matrix, mitochondrial matrix, and the outermost one, the outer one, which is inner to the outer membrane, known as the intermembrane space. Intermembrane space. So there are two compartments within the mitochondria due to the presence of two membrane. Okay, now how this cristae is actually supporting the respiratory substances. Cristae will be accommodating numerous respiratory substances that are there in the respiratory chain or electron transport chain. So this will be organized within this cristae like this. I am just representing only within the one cristae. So numerous respiratory substances will be organized within this. So think about the situation where cristae is absent. What will be the only surface area is like this, and the number of respiratory substances that can be accommodated will be comparatively smaller. Okay, so at this particular point the ATP synthesis is happening. Okay, within the cristae numerous respiratory substances are there, and there you can find the ATP synthesis. Now the outer membrane, across the outer membrane we can find two sides, and this side, the outer side, will be known as cytosolic side. Why it is known as cytosolic side? Because it is facing the cytoplasm, and most of the components within the cytoplasm is equal to the components within the cytosolic side. That's why this particular side is known as the cytosolic side. And the inner side is known as the matrix side, because we have to know about this when we are thinking about oxidative phosphorylation. There we will be just mentioning the transport of proton out of matrix to the cytosolic side. So it is transported from here to here during the oxidative phosphorylation electron transport chain. So that's about the structure of mitochondria with a special reference to metabolism. So what we have to keep in mind is mitochondria is a double membrane structure within the cytoplasm. Cell organelles within the cytoplasm. Outer membrane is almost permeable due to the presence of voltage dependent anion channels or mitochondrial porins. The inner membrane is almost impermeable, and the polar molecules and ions require transporters to cross the inner membrane and reaches the matrix. Due to the presence of double membrane, there are two compartments within the mitochondria, the intermembrane space and matrix. The inner membrane is actually folded into numerous folds, and that is known as the cristae. And cristae, the presence is for supporting maximum number of respiratory substances, as it can increase the surface area of inner membrane. And the respiratory substances will be accommodated within the cristae. Okay, so that's about the mitochondria, in structure of mitochondria with regard to the metabolism. Okay, so after this you have to watch oxidative phosphorylation and electron transport, oxidative phosphorylation, which include electron transport chain and ATP synthesis, by which the aerobic respiration will be completed and ATP will be formed from respiration. Okay, so you can just watch the next lesson. Thank you.